You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
All of the crazy things that I do, whether they be work-related or just all the fan, nerd, geeky things that I do, conventions and get-togethers and you name it, I come in contact with a lot of interesting and unique people. And I'm always fascinated by what people do and what they're into. You know, I am not exclusionary in any way. Everybody's invited to the table. This show, 91 Reasons, is for everyone, and it doesn't matter. Like, we don't judge here. Whatever you're into, that's great. This is what we're into, and we don't have any problems with anybody. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, other than to say that I've been listening to. We were just mentioned. 91 Reasons was just mentioned on a podcast, Parks and Cons, which is a good show you should be listening to. Sean, the host, ran down a lot of the podcasts that he listens to, and we were the first one that he mentioned, so that's so cool. And he was saying how we're like sitting on the porch and reminiscing, and that is exactly what we're doing here. We are sitting on the porch and reminiscing about days gone by, and even if I do something current like the what I'm going to talk about today, there are still the reasons I did the current thing is because of the past, if that makes sense. But like I said, I come in contact with a lot of people. And real quick on a side note, I know I'm rambling. This is what happens when I don't have a fully formed show in my head. You sort of get stream of consciousness. So it's a little different. But somebody was saying that they like the show because it's family friendly and they can listen. Oh, and the phone's ringing again. What are the chances of that? I picked it up and I hung it up. It's only fun if I can answer the phone during the show and make a bit out of it. But if the stupid Incredibles phone doesn't work, and yes, I just bought another phone at the thrift store last night and got so excited, and it didn't work. So I'm 0 for 2 with the phones, and I have my cell phone, but our house phone currently, whoever it is calling the house phone, and you know what it is? It's all telemarketers. I know I talked about this before, but it's AT&T, and they call all day, and they go, "Hi, we'd like to talk to you about you getting a phone service." And I'm like, I'm talking to you on a phone service. I don't want your phone service. Stop calling my phone service to sell me your phone service. I don't want your phone service, you know? Anywho, I like that the show is family friendly, and Rachel is to credit for that, because I was going to do that Christmas rant show that would have been a real black eye on our show listings as far as language and content. So I'm happy that we're keeping it family friendly, that you can listen in the car with everybody there, that we're talking about things that everybody likes to hear about, or if you're in the genre, if you're in the fandom, if you're a nerd or a geek like me. So, anywho. But like I said, I meet a lot of people. And it's funny how I have 2 or 3 different business cards. I have a work business card. I have a podcast business card. I have a book series business card. And I open up my little business card thing and try to hand cards. Which one do you want? Like, which person are you interested in? Which one of me do you like that you want to interact with? But somebody gave me their business card at Scare LA, which was a lot of fun, and he works at one of the major studios. He works at Warner Brothers. And he said, hey, if your family wants a tour, you should give me a call. And I looked and I said, now hold on here. I said, you're not one of those guys that's giving me this card thinking I'm never going to call, because if you're offering me a tour of Warner Brothers, I am going to call. That's something I'd be very interested in. Now, I know that Warner Brothers offers a paid tour, but I know it's quite expensive. Like it's theme park expensive, but there are no rides except for the golf cart. So I had looked into the Warner Brothers because I know that they have some cool installations there that are specifically for the tour. So it's not just backlot stuff. Although the backlot stuff is what I'm interested in. It doesn't hurt that they have some things that are specifically designed for the tourist in mind. But the guy was like, no, you really should call. So I sent him an email about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, hey, if you're still serious about giving us a tour of Warner Brothers, we will definitely take you up on that sometime in the new year. And he was very good about writing me back, was like, yeah, sure. Just pick a day. Weekdays are better. I was like, hey, weekdays are better for me. I work in the theme park industry, so my weekends are spent walking the midways between the Old West and good old Mexico and the boardwalk and Wildwater Wilderness and places like this. So we worked up a day, and it was last week, and it was really exciting. Like it's rare that there's a backlot I've not been on, so I was really jazzed for it. So we loaded the whole family into the car, and I live in Riverside, so going to Warner Brothers, you're talking 70 miles, like it's quite a distance, and I wanted to make the absolute most out of the trip. So I did a lot of internet research, and I wanted to find where the shooting location of one of our favorite shows is. And I was concerned, like, if it's on a back lot and it's not Warner Brothers, we're out of luck. But it turned out that the house that they use in the Goldbergs is just on the street in Cheviot Hills. So I found out where it was. That was really difficult because, that's the kind of stuff that the studio doesn't want you to know. They don't want looky-loos. So I didn't tell the family where we were going. I just said we're going to stop at a house used in a movie. Now, last time we did this, we stopped at the Brady Bunch house, which was great. We stopped at Dunder Mifflin from The Office, which was really cool. So we're driving through, and it's all these, make a right, make a left, little small street, make a right, make a left. And out of nowhere, we're in this really posh neighborhood. And we pull up, and I had the CD player queued. So the minute we saw the house, it played the theme song to the Goldbergs. I told you I was a nerd. So my wife looks over, and before the song even kicks in, she goes, oh my God, it's the Goldbergs. Now that's a big deal because my wife doesn't recognize a lot of things like that. Rachel's a fan of this stuff, but she's not like crazy like me. So the fact that she knew without even hesitation whose house it was pretty impressive and indicative that we really do watch the show a lot. Like I bought the first season for Christmas, and we've watched every episode and all the extras. And I know that all the interiors are done on a backlot. But the exterior of the house, it looked to me as if no one was living there, as if the studio has purchased this house, painted it pristine to look exactly what they want to look like. And as long as they pull the permit from the city, they can film whenever the heck they want. So it was a win-win for the studio. And there was a sign tacked to the tree, the tree that Barry climbs up and then can't get out of, that said no parking on Monday of this week. So they were going to be filming there, which would have been, I can't imagine what it would have been like. I'm sure the streets closed off to some degree. So we got lucky. We were able to park right across the street. We got out. We took some pictures with the house. And it was my continuing adventures of making the intangible tangible for my kids, because we know it's a TV show. We know they're actors. But to be at the Goldbergs' house, pretty darn freaking cool. Really, really neat. And a really great show. If you're not tuned into the Goldbergs, and you listen to this show, you're missing out, because The Goldbergs is the sitcom biographical version of 91 Reasons. We are kindred spirits in that way, in that the show is about the 80s, and they made a brilliant decision to set the show in 80-something. So it allows them to jump around the decade whenever they want and to use whatever references they want without keeping it date specific. So that was a brilliant move on their part. But it is a great love letter to the 80s, and each show is capped at the end by actual VHS footage that Adam Goldberg took in the 80s of his family or him playing with his toys. And it really does bring the show into vibrant life, because we know it's hyper realized. We know that it's not 100% reality, but it does have its roots in reality. And there is an element of The Simpsons to it, because they fight, but at the end, they really love each other. And it's very apparent in the very meticulous writing and the fun cappers at the end with the videos and sometimes still pictures. But yeah, we saw the Goldberg house, and that revved us up. So the next stop we made was Blast Off Comics in North Hollywood, which is the hangout and hotspot for comics writer Scott Tipton, who is a really cool guy and is currently writing Planet of the Apes meets Star Trek for IDW. What a coup, man. What an amazing feat for a guy who's as big a nerd and fan as I am of stuff to actually get to play in the sandbox of both the original Trek and the original Planet of the Apes. I mean, that's really cool. You know, and the title was The Primate Directive. That's brilliant. Oh my God, that's brilliant. So we stopped at his comic shop for a minute. He wasn't there. He was working at his other place. But it was cool to see it finally. And yeah, I love, any chance to go to a comic shop was great. Now, he had some of the nicest, oh my God, the nicest vintage comics I've ever seen. So many pristine first appearances, both in a display case and on the wall, that it was really overwhelming as far as comics go. He had a few high-end collectibles, not really an action figure kind of store, more comic-based. But worth checking out if you're in North Hollywood. Let's Blast Off Comics on Lancashire, a very cool place. And they also have a great website, Blast Off Comics, that I write pop culture articles for 2 or 3 times a month. So check those out. Like them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter or whatever. So we finally made our way up to Burbank to the Warner Brothers Studios, which was great. On the way in, we saw the greatest omen ever that the day was going to be good, and that was we passed a Boston Market, which is my favorite fast food of all time, if you can call it fast food, but my favorite fast food of all time. Their chicken carver sandwich is the greatest. I'll take that over Subway any day of the week. But they all went out of business over here. There's one in Brea, and there was one in Whittier that I ate at, and then the next day they closed. So hopefully that's not me doing that. I'm not like Schleprock. But anyways, we knew that after the tour we'd be stopping there for dinner. So everything was coming up, Jeff. Hello. So I called this guy. He told us where to go. We pulled up to the guard shack, and it was funny. They gave us the total third degree. Who are you, sir? I'm Jeff Tucker. What are you doing here? We're meeting someone for a tour. Hold on. IDs, please. I felt like was at a checkpoint, Papers, please, papers. Dun 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 dun. So he takes my ID, takes Rachel's ID, and then he leans in and he's like, "These your children?" "Yes, they're my kids." "How old are they?" 17, 14, and 9. Is that a question? No, it's not a question. Is it a statement? Yes, it's a statement, sir. What are the kids' names? Luke, Austin, and Josie. Okay, hold on, sir. And he goes in the guard shack, and he comes back moments later with beautiful printed passes to get in. Like of course we were on the list. I'm not sure what the third degree was. Well, maybe it was to make sure we were really who said we were. But anyways, so he tells us we have to go park at this structure, and it's on the complete other side of the lot. So we got to drive the whole length of the lot and get a sneak peek before we even hooked up with our tour guide. So that was great. We pulled in the parking structure, and oh my gosh, it was so busy. Like there's so many golf carts with tourists driving around, and everybody's busy. Like, this is the studio that Pee-wee goes to at the end of Big Adventure to get his bike back. And he has that amazing chase through all the sound stages. And he has that moment where he's walking across the back lot, and there's all these, there's like a centurion and all these different genre costumes, like the movie studio that we imagine in our dreams, where all these projects are going on at the same time. And it's not quite like that. There aren't a lot of people walking around in costume. Now, I'm sure when there's something big being filmed, like our tour guide told us they'd filmed Last Samurai on the lot and had tore up huge areas and filled them with dirt to make the battlefield. So I'm sure at that point there were these samurai warriors having cheeseburgers and walking around, and that must have been really cool. But also, it must have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of stifling for the tour. Because if you've got a big production taking up all this space and altering the look, you don't get to have the tour. So luckily, there was not a lot going on last week. They were shooting the TV show Mom, the sitcom, with Allison Janney and Anna Faris. We didn't see them, but we saw the line of people waiting to go in to watch the taping. And what we mostly saw a lot of were these mega-sized, golf carts that are like little buses that hold like 12, 13 people. When we met our guide, he was on a very small golf cart. So this was like the most intimate kind of tour you can take with a guy who's not only incredibly nice and friendly, but he's been there nearly 40 years working on the lot. So he knows everything, every nook, cranny, every intricate little thing. So this made it a lot of fun because we were getting a personal tour through the lot by a very knowledgeable guy who was not doing this because it was his job. He was doing it because he wanted to do it. And doesn't that make all the difference in the world? So it was great. Luke, Austin, and Rachel sat on the back of the golf cart. I sat in the passenger seat, and I had Josie on my lap. So, oh my God, all the safety advocates are cringing in horror. He's got a 9-year-old on his lap. Oh, but whatever. It was so much fun. Oh my God. And when we got to the end, jumping forward real quick, when they asked Josie what her favorite part was, she said, riding in the golf cart with my daddy. So I was like, oh, that's so nice. That's so cute. Anyways. So our guide takes us on a whirlwind tour. He started with right smack in the middle of Warner Brothers is a jungle. Like they've left all this vegetation intact. And it has its own lagoon. And they've left it, and he said they were going to tear it down and put a parking structure up. So as much as I hated having to park on the roof, I'm so glad that was the option other than taking out this historic piece of movie history. We saw them working. The workers there were redoing a building, which was the Merlot Bar and Grill from True Blood. Like it's just right there on the lot, steps away from the dressing room. So that must have been really easy for all those scenes in True Blood. I've not watched the show. I don't know what it is. I think I watched the first episode, and my whole take on it was kind of like Stanley on The Office when he goes, "How many vampires am I supposed to care about?" And that's kind of how I felt about it. I'm sure it was great. I know people would tell me I should watch it because it had a lot of nudity in it. That's not my thing. I think Romo just took a drink. Anyways. But right next to it was the lagoon. It was not filled in with water. And it's funny because our guide's like, well, this lagoon was well, George Clooney saved someone from drowning in an episode of ER here. And I looked over and I said, kids, this is the lagoon where Pee-wee swings on a vine with his bike over it when they're chasing him on the lot. And that was the first time that he looked at me and he goes, how do you know that? I said, well, I'm kind of a dork when it comes to this stuff. Like, this is how I spent my childhood, my teenage years, was poring over movies and trivia books, long before the internet made it so easy to track this stuff down. And he's like, well, this ought to be a fun tour. I said, it'll be great because between what you know and what I know, we're going to uncover everything here on the lot. So the tour continued. We ended up, they have a little town square that's kind of similar to Hill Valley. Instead of a courthouse, though, it's anchored by a church. It's used very often in Pretty Little Liars and a few other shows. I couldn't recall a lot of movies that it was in. Like, it's so nondescript. I mean, that's the whole point, is that you're not supposed to notice where you are. It's just any town, USA. So it's not iconic like the Clock Tower. But there were other streets. There was a New York street where they filmed parts of Annie. And we saw a Brownstone Street that looked just like Do the Right Thing. He showed us the little coffee shop where it's the last surviving set from Casablanca, and thank goodness they kept it. It's during the flashback when Rick and Elsa are at the Cafe Americano. So really like just film history. We saw the pet shop where Pee-wee runs out with all the snakes in his arms. We took a picture in front of the steps that served as City Hall on the Adam West Batman show. It's featured in nearly every episode where the Batmobile parks and Batman and Robin jump out and run up the steps. Like, I knew that in an instant. Oh my God, it's so iconic. It's redressed right now for a movie that's coming out with George Clooney where he plays a publicist in Hollywood's golden age. Not Hail Caesar, I think it's going to be called. But, a lot of movies change their titles. Now, the great thing about this tour is we're parking the cart and getting out and walking around. We walked through facades, around sound stages. All the while, all the regular tourists on the little carts are zooming by us. And, we saw some amazing tour guides that were really getting into the show that they were giving. But they weren't allowed to get out and walk around, so we actually were walking around and looking at things, and it gives you such an appreciation for how movies are made. Like, I already had that, but I'm hoping to instill that in my kids so that they understand all the magic that it takes to fool the eye and make a movie. We zoomed through an area that was used as Hazard County for the Dukes of Hazzard, and stopped at a spot that had a pretty elaborate store set, which was both an interior and an exterior, which there are not a lot of those around. And it's funny because he goes, you probably won't recognize it, but this used to be Cooter's Garage from Dukes of Hazzard, but now this set was built in the 90s and left here, and I was like, I know what this is. This is the toy shop from Small Soldiers. He's like, you really are a nerd, Jeff. And I was like, yes, I really am a nerd. I really, really am. So we got to walk around in that, and that was pretty cool. It's just living those moments. And I know that Luke watched Small Soldiers quite a bit because that was right in his time frame. And we had all the toys and stuff, We're very big on those manias that pop up, and you're able to buy all the toys in the movie and go get all the Happy Meal toys at Burger King. But it was just amazing to be around all these sets. We parked, and he took us down, a fake alleyway, and I took a picture, and he's like, right here on this spot is where Mary Jane and Spider-Man kissed while he was hanging upside down. I'm like, that's an iconic movie moment. And to be right at the spot is very cool. We passed by an area that's on the ground, but was actually dressed to be the rooftop of the building in Ocean's 13 where they're fighting over the is it the diamonds that they're getting? I don't remember. That movie, Ocean's 11 is great, 12 and 13 not so great. Spoiler alert, not so great. We zoomed through all these different areas. He took us through where they build all the sets, the plaster shop. I took a picture with oversized Academy Awards, like really just one-of-a-kind movie immersive stuff. I asked him, I said, on the Pee-wee's Big Adventure, deleted scene through the tour, they show him riding by one of the shuttlecrafts from V. And I did a Google search, and one of the shuttlecrafts from V was there as late as 1998, which, yes, is 17 years ago, but is still 14 years after the show. So maybe somebody was keeping it for something. And I said, is there a V shuttlecraft anywhere on the backlot? And he laughed at me and he goes, dude, right over here in this parking lot, there was an entire fleet of them back in the day. But, eventually they all get broken down. And I was like, oh, I missed it. I could have sat in a V shuttle, if I'd only thought of this 17 years ago. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, right? So we ended up at the furniture and prop warehouse, which is so massive it defies description. And he kept doing something that was the coolest thing ever, where he would go, this is not on the regular tour. And every time he said that, I was like, that's why we're here, pal. We want the stuff nobody gets. So we went down into the basement of the prop and furniture warehouse, and we saw, it's hard to even describe, like 1,000 different styles of chairs and couches and parking meters and popcorn vending machines. And I joked with the kids. I said, this building, like we could see the end of the building so far down, you could have ridden a bike and it would have taken you 10 minutes. And I said, kids, this is so massive. In here somewhere is the Ark of the Covenant. And they're laughing at me. So a few stalls down, we found an entire area of Egyptian artifacts, and oh my God, a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. So I had to take my picture with it. The Ark of the Covenant, not the one from Raiders, but a reasonable facsimile. So that was really cool, just looking at all the amazing, I told him it was like being in the world's most amazing antique shop, but nothing's for sale. Only looking. Just stuff you couldn't believe, like mascot heads and robotic suits of armor, and it's exactly what you picture when you think about the world's greatest prop warehouse. Like, that's exactly it. It did not disappoint. So we went up top and saw what the regular tourists get, and what they get is you get to go into the Central Perks set from Friends, which thankfully somebody had the good idea to save and put in a building. So now, I never watched Friends. I have no frame of reference for this show, so it didn't really do anything for me. But I know that for the other 99% of the population, that's a big deal. So I get that. I know why it's there. Take a drink. It's not my thing. But we did go into the upper levels of the prop warehouse, and there's a whole hallway where they've put things that are iconic so that I guess they don't get lost in the shuffle. But while our tour guide was showing us some giant marble heads that were featured in the twins fight in Matrix Reloaded, the big staircase, there are two statues. There were the heads from those statues. I looked to the left, and there in the aisle was Morpheus's chair. It wasn't a joke either, because I looked to the right and there was a sign confirming that it was Morpheus's chair and the TV that he shows Neo the destruction of Earth on. Like, that's an amazing piece of movie history. Of course, it had a sign that said, please don't sit, because the first thing everybody wants to do is sit in Morpheus's chair. But there it was, Morpheus's freaking chair. It was so cool. I love that kind of movie history. That's the kind of stuff that gets me, it gets you percolating, and all the creative things start flowing, because that great story that you like, and The Matrix is a great story, here's a tangible piece of it. And that's hard to come by. It's hard to make your dream a reality. And at the movies, that's all they do. And it doesn't always work out. For every Matrix, there's a Matrix Reloaded. For every Matrix Reloaded that you try to like, there's a Matrix Revolutions that destroys all of that. So anyways, there was also what looked like Sandra Bullock's tiara from Miss Congeniality, and a few other things, like some bottles of True Blood from True Blood, So we had a good time in there, and we went all through it. We saw like a lot of stuff that you're just not normally privy to. So it was very cool. And then he decided to take us to some of the installations. So we got to see, like, we don't know what we're going into. We're just following our guide, who is daringly taking us all through this place. So he opens the door and he's like, "Quick, let's go. I'm like, "You got it. We're in." We walk through a room. We walk through the door into the room, and there is all the Batmobiles. They had the Keaton Batmobile, the Christian Bale Tumbler, the Camouflage Tumbler, Robin's motorcycle from Batman and Robin, Batgirl's motorcycle from Batman and Robin, the Batman Forever Batmobile, the Bat Hammer from Batman and Robin. They had the Bat Signal there, like really, really cool. And they had the statue honoring Batman. So a really impressive collection, nicely displayed, well lit, very, very impressive. And I continued my movie trivia with him by telling him, does this Batman Forever, the Val Kilmer Batmobile, does it evoke H.R. Giger? He's like, "Oh my God, I've never even thought of that." I said, "Yes." I said, "Well, H.R. Giger was employed on Batman Forever for a couple of weeks to come up with a new Batmobile, and his stuff was considered way too weird. So they let him go, paid him off, and then warped his design into a toy-friendly version, and that's a toy-friendly version of a Batmobile, of a Giger Batmobile." So that was pretty cool. They did not have the Batman and Robin rainbow engine car. I wonder where that is and why it wasn't on display. So interesting. We also went next door and saw a duplicate of the Batman Forever Batmobile. This one not so polished and shined up, because this one had just been used to film a commercial for, I think, the studio tour with Kaylee Kuko from Big Bang Theory, which is also filmed on the lot. And I know a lot of guys watch that show. I don't watch it. It has a laugh track. I can't deal with it. Take a drink. It's not my thing. But anyways, we also headed over to the Warner Brothers Museum, which is there for the the studio, the people who take the tour. And when you go in, the head of the curator, head guy, he tells you, feel free to take as many pictures as you want. Please don't use your flash. And then he says, it's Batman on the bottom floor, Harry Potter on the top floor. And I looked at him and I said, "You know what?" And I grabbed a tissue off his desk and I dabbed at my eyes. I said, "I've always wanted somebody to tell me it was Batman on the bottom floor and Harry Potter on the top. And now my dream has come true." He was like, "I understand, sir." So we checked out the Batman display. They had all the cowls. They had all the costumes. Heath Ledger Joker, Heath Ledger Joker Nurse, Bane from Dark Knight Rises, Bane from Batman and Robin, Poison Ivy, Jack Nicholson Joker, Michael Keaton's full Batman costume from 1989, and the totally different version from Batman Returns. All the hand props, all the Riddler's props. They had Catwoman's costume from Batman Returns, behind glass because it's slowly deteriorating. They had Anne Hathaway's not Batgirl, but Catwoman outfit. So all the Batman stuff was there. Really impressive, very well preserved, beautiful to look at. Ra's al Ghul, Ducard, all of the Schumacher hand props, which good or bad, whatever you think of the movies, the hand props that were made for Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are flawless. They're all shiny chrome, beautiful, hefty. They look practical. They look like they're going to work. So all the production design, save for the Batman and Robin Batmobile, was top notch. It's not their fault the script was a mess. And I'm looking at you, Akiva Goldsman, hack. But that was really cool. And then we went upstairs, and I saw my kids. I saw Luke and Austin, mostly Luke, get a little misty-eyed because it was a really impressive and thorough display of Harry Potter props. And I know that the majority of them are still in England because they have a Harry Potter experience there at the studios where it was all filmed. But for Warner Brothers to have this much stuff was pretty cool. They had the Privet Drive sign. They had Harry's fireplace with the letters rigged to look like they're coming out of it. They had all three principal outfits from Deathly Hallows. They had every kind of robe you can imagine, from Dumbledore to Lockhart. They had hand props, wands. They had Aragog, which Luke would not get near because it was terrifying. They had a Dementor's hand for reference on the set. They had frozen Hermione from Chamber of Secrets, which was great because I pointed out that they had covered her lower half with a sheet. Because you know that the first day it was on display, somebody looked up her skirt, which I find hilarious. But you know what happened. Luke was impressed because they had Ron Weasley's Quidditch outfit with his goofy, like 1930s leatherhead helmet. They had all the candy from the candy store. Really, really worth. If you're a Harry Potter fan, that's worth the price of admission alone. And I know that they're building the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios, but don't forget down the road, they got all the real props right there, which Universal doesn't have. So it's well worth a trip there just to see movie history right there, you know? And see, the same way with Batman, any of these big genre picks, when they make the props, they don't chintz out on them. They make them look functional, practical, like they've been used in the real world. That's a hallmark of people who care when they're making movies. And the Warner Brothers productions of both the Batman series and the Harry Potter series show a commitment to the character. You know, they sometimes falter in their scripts, but props and look and art and production design are all top notch. So our tour guide took us to the actual Central Perks, which is the studio Starbucks and gift shop. They had a lot of nice things in the gift shop, but we were on a budget, so we weren't able to purchase anything. But we did splurge getting a Starbucks, because how often do you get a Java chip Frappuccino in the heart of a movie studio? So that was pretty darn cool. We sipped our drinks while we looked at a piece of the Berlin Wall that's on display and the war monument for all of the actors who dropped what they were doing and enlisted to fight in World War II, including Jimmy Stewart and Ronald Reagan. We walked through the bungalows, which house all of the upper executive offices that look straight out of the late 20s, early 30s. Just Hollywood history right there. We went through a couple of just random places that were interesting, soundstage here or there, you know, just to get a feel for how massive they are and all the work that goes into dressing them into becoming another world. There was a major production filming on one of the stages. We drove around a few times looking for a glimpse inside, but we were not successful. I can't say what movie it was because I guess nobody knows what it is. But in some other episode, if somebody reminds me, after that movie is released, I will go, that's the movie that they were filming pickup shots for. We had the greatest time at Warner Brothers for that tour. We saw amazing places and sets, props, actual furniture pieces and set pieces and stuff that inspires the imagination and makes you want to dream big and makes me want to fully imagine Engine 17 alive and breathing on the Warner Brothers lot as a full practical set as filming of The Sixth Key commences. Hey, stranger things have happened, right? Stranger things have happened. So our tour ended up being nearly 5 hours, which went by in the blink of an eye because our guide was so friendly, so knowledgeable, and willing to just take us all through this huge backlot area. We had a great time. We're going to go back either late this year or early next year because they're upgrading all of their tour facilities, and they're going to have some more immersive displays, which I cannot wait to see. So we look forward to that. This has just been a mini episode of our backlot experience on the Warner Brothers studio lot. It's in Burbank. You can check out their website. You can buy a tour. This is something that you can do. You won't get the personal treatment we got, but the tour guides that we saw doing it were top notch, highly recommended. This is nerds only, man. What a cool thing to do. And something that not everyone will think to do. So, keeping up the score, I have been on the Paramount lot. I have been all through the Universal lot. I've been on the 20th Century Fox lot back in the early 80s. And now I have just gone to the Warner Brothers lot. So I am making the rounds, man. I am making the rounds. I love movie studios. So we had dinner at Boston Market. Fantastic. And then on the way home, we drove through Pasadena to find Andy's house from Pretty in Pink. And we did find it, although it's on a street that's pitch black. So it wasn't quite as impressive as the Goldbergs. But it is located in that amazing neighborhood in Pasadena where all of the Halloween movies were filmed and a lot of productions. So it's very famous. Almost every house is iconic in some way or another. So we'll have to check that out sometime in the daylight where it can be really impressive. But hey, do a Google search. Find out where all the movie locations are and go check out all the places that mean something to you. You know, they filmed Clerks 2 a block and a half from Knott's Berry Farm. So while they were doing that, we went and watched them film all the time. It was at an old Burger King that we used to eat at. So the movies in Clerks 2 is actually an old Burger King that I used to eat at all the time. We begged Kevin Smith to keep it open. Like, just, you know what? We know you're a movie maker, but just run a food franchise. Why not? And leave movies open for us. But instead, they tore it down. But you can see Soak City in like one or two quick shots in the movie because it's right across the street. So the movie locations are out there, folks. You know, Ferris Bueller's House is in Long Beach. You name it, man. Excelsior High School in Norwalk, where I grew up, where they filmed High School USA, Grease 2, Reform School Girls. Like, it's just cool to know all these cool places. So I can check off Warner Brothers on that lot. So, hey, thanks for listening. The best way to support the show, leave us a review on iTunes. That's the only way we're going to move up in the iTunes listings and be featured prominently to get more listeners is that you give us a quick review. It only takes a minute. We really appreciate it. You can also support the show on Patreon, patreon.com. Search 91 Reasons. There's also a link to that on our 91 Reasons Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at The Sixth Key, spelled out. There's always fun stuff to post. I'll be putting up a lot of pictures from the Warner Brothers tour just because it was a lot of fun. And it's great to see all those images and all those props. So, hey, thanks for listening. And I am headed today to go to the Vintage Arcade and Pinball Expo in Banning. We're going to leave in about an hour. So hopefully I can tie that in, because I've been thinking about doing an episode about all the amazing arcades I used to go to as a teenager. So I'm going to go to a massive arcade where my childhood dream of all the games being included with admission free is about to come true. And I looked on the website. They have mostly pinball, but they have a lot of video games, including a game I have not played in 20 years, Mr. Do, the Dig Dug ripoff starring a clown. I cannot wait. It's from 2 to midnight tonight, and who knows how long I'll stay. I'm going to go dressed as Marty McFly, because there's no better way to go to an 80s arcade than dressed in my 80s gear. So I'll see you at the arcade, folks. And this show is called 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?